So based on the comments and the emails that I receive, I know that there are a lot of you out there who watch this channel who have never been in an interracial relationship before but would like to give it a try. You're either, just starting to open up your dating pool and your options within your dating pool, or you have like a particular person in mind that you want to pursue, that you've developed a romantic interest in. And because there are a lot of you out there who fall into this camp, there are certain things on this channel that I don't really talk about or bring up in any detail because, honestly, it's hard enough doing anything, like anything at all. It's hard enough to do anything at all for the very first time. And I really don't want to be someone who discourages you from stepping outside of your comfort zone. Like, I really want to be like a champion, a cheerleader for you, and someone who provides you positivity and encouragement. And at the same time, I do think it's really important to be really transparent. And y'all, I'm a very realistic person. I'm a Virgo here, so I'm always gonna lean towards logic, towards rationality, and towards just being very honest and transparent. People here, at least, will always, at least I think, will always gravitate naturally and primarily towards people within their own race. And the reason I'm telling you this, because obviously this is obvious, is because so many of you out there, I have so many men who ask me, like, why is it so hard? Why do I keep getting rejected? Like, why are the black women that I approach not interested? Like, why do they turn me down? And there can be a plethora of reasons why. And without knowing you, without knowing them, like, I can't really say much. I can't really tell you why, but I can tell you that anytime you deviate from the norm, you're going to run into obstacles. Now, I know many black women out there who use black men as like the outliers to this standard because we look on TV or we look on social media and we see so many of these athletes and these actors, just these celebrities, these men who are in interracial relationships, and it looks like this is like the primary type of relationship that these men are in. But that's just not true. Like, for the most part, at least within the black community, and I'm sure within all racial demographics, like, for the most part, black people are with black people. And the reason that, spotlight and attention is brought to those who are not in these types of relationships is those athletes, those actors, like, they are famous people. So anything that they do will draw attention to them. And second of all, we are a very tiny population. Like, the black community is a very small community within like the overall racial makeup of the United States. I was just reading an article that black women make up 10% of the US population. Like, that is so tiny. Now, I don't believe, and maybe this is me being naive, but I don't think that same race relationships being the norm or the standard comes from just racism or comes from just racial bias. I'm sure, look, let me be clear. Yes, some of it does come from that, for sure. And at the same time, I don't think that that is like the number one reason why. I think that the number one reason why is because same race dating, same race relationships, like, they're just more convenient, and for many people they're more comfortable, and a lot of that comfort comes from the convenience factor. I'm just gonna speak, to black people as a black woman. Like, if you're a black woman, for the most part, it's easier to date and to be in a relationship with a black man, or at minimum, it's easier to find a black man to be in a relationship with. Like, it's just easier in terms of, if you're a black person that's mostly grown up with and socialized or been socialized by other black people, then you're gonna feel like you know what to expect when it comes to a black man. And since you feel like you know what to expect, you're gonna feel more of a sense of ease, more of a sense of comfort. And in a lot of ways, I actually think that's kind of the problem that's plaguing the black community in so many ways, is that we are so tiny, we are so small, and because of that, and because we don't necessarily date outside of our race and do all these other things. I think we're kind of getting tired of each other, and we treat one another poorly because we feel like we've done it all, we've seen it all, we know it all. But I do believe, I do believe that interracial relationships can be a lot easier to come by or not, depending on where you are located. And again, this isn't going to be really groundbreaking, but let's like actually talk about why that may be and some of the nuances to this. In my experience, I have found interracial relationships far more common here in the Pacific Northwest than I ever did when I was living down south, including even being in Atlanta. Like, it's just far more common here. Like, even in the apartment complex that I live in, like, my neighbors are in interracial relationships. Every single time that I go outside, like literally every single time that I go outside, I usually pass interracial mixed race couples. And that did not happen that frequently for me when I was living in the South. And I'm just using the PNW versus the South because those are places that I've lived in. And again, I'm speaking to my experience. Now, overall, the PNW is a very urban and, let's be clear, the area in the PNW that I live in, so here in the Tacoma, like Seattle area, it's very urban and it's very liberal and it's just very progressive and open-minded in a lot of ways. And I have found from living in a place like this that's very urban, very progressive, very liberal, and comparing that with where I grew up in the Deep South, which was very rural and very deeply conservative, that I have found in conservative areas, especially like deeply conservative areas, not like moderate, but like deeply conservative, it's a lot harder to enter into an interracial relationship. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that interracial relationships don't exist in these places. I know that maybe you're a person in a deeply conservative area and you're in an interracial relationship, or, maybe you know plenty of people. Just because, you had eggs and toast for breakfast this morning does not mean that world hunger doesn't exist, or just because it snowed last week doesn't mean that global warming and climate change isn't real. So I'm not talking about the anecdotes. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking generally. And generally, that is what I have found, and what I have heard that you all have found to be true too from the comments and the emails that I receive. And I want to be clear here. This is not a political thing. This is not me pitting liberals versus conservatives. That's not what I'm doing here. This is not about like traditional politics or government. So let's not get it twisted. That's not what's happening here. What I am saying though is that in places that are more conservative, you are going to find it potentially more difficult as a Black woman or, as a white man to enter into an interracial relationship because of the nature of a lot of conservative values. And let's talk about that. I have found, and again, this is from my experience, I have found when I was living in a very deeply conservative area that a lot of these traditional conservative values are rooted in family, right? And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like, having a strong family, there's nothing wrong with that. There is a flip side to that, though, depending on the beliefs and the belief system of that family. So, and I've seen this in the comments where so many of you have said, there was a Black woman that I was so interested in, but I never pursued her because my family was opposed to interracial relationships. And why this has so much weight is because of the fact that in a system or within like a family where family values and family opinion is so deeply respected and valued, it's going to have a greater impact and effect on your dating choices, because you're not just dating for yourself, you're also dating for your family as well. And again, I don't think there's really anything inherently wrong with that. But if you are trying to do something as an individual that does not satisfy the family, then you can see how there would be conflict. And just another thing is that, people that hold more traditional values and that do really value family and building a family and a legacy and all of those things, like, those people are likely going to have done that earlier in their life. They're going to have prioritized that. And so there's probably just literally less of those people available in the dating market in general, because that's something that they have prioritized probably earlier in their life. And so Again, this isn't supposed to be like a political thing of conservative versus liberal. I'm just pointing to the fact that in general, just the idea of the word conservative, like to conserve something means to kind of keep it in a particular way, to like keep it in its like current state and to maintain that. And so if there's something that looks different from that, or is different from that, or that could change the structure of that, then it might not be as acceptable. Now, my last point of discussion is just that for me, like I've always kind of found interracial dating easy because it's easy to me because it's just something I've always done. Like I've never really thought about it. And it's not like dating has not always been easy for me by any means, but just the interracial part has never really been that difficult for me. But I wanted to just be clear that like for some people, it's very difficult, and it's difficult to the point where it's just not worth it. And I think that that is okay. And I feel like we're kind of living in a time, especially with like the divestment movement really taking off, where I think a lot of people are thinking that interracial relationships can really be like the I don't know, the savior of Black women and can save us from poverty and save us from broken families and all this and that. And I just think that we're putting way too much stock in something like that. And really, the only person that can kind of save us is ourselves, you know, and making better choices for ourselves. But anywho, the point I'm getting at is that for some people, there are going to be parts of interracial dating and being in an interracial relationship that just, like, the obstacles are just going to be, like, insurmountable. There are going to be certain cultural differences that you're going to get tired of dealing with. And there are certain parts of being with someone who's so different from you culturally where you sometimes it can require a lot of patience, not always, but sometimes it can. And I just think that we have to be realistic that it's really not for everyone, and everyone is not for everyone, and that is okay. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed, and until next time, stay safe, be well, and I'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.